Tommy, you're now at Chicago State as an assistant coach, man. How does it feel?
Man, it's a blessing, man. It's been a grind. I mean, you've seen a lot of it, right? You've been
Yeah,
there since really day one for a lot of it. So, it's been awesome, man. When I first got into the coaching realm, I didn't think that, you know, first I wasn't going to be a college coach. I kind of jumped over to the speed stuff and just like thought
right.
like I was going to do that just kind of as a hobby. And then it turned into like,
Sure.
hey, I like coaching, and so then I thought, hey, maybe I'll do this for a while. And then I thought maybe high school. And now
Right.
I want to be a college coach, and it's like, okay, I want to get into Division I college coaching, right? So then I do I do the ops stuff and just try to, work my way up. And, really, I mean, when people say it's a grind, it is a grind.
No
There's a
question.
lot of
How,
sacrifice
how is
involved
the
with
op
it.
stuff, Tommy? Like for a lot of
It's
people that don't know, like they have aspirations to be D of ops, man. Talk about that.
different. Well, I mean, I started as a video coordinator, right? So like everything when I was at Richmond, the University of Richmond for Coach Mooney down there. And so like that was a lot of, film breakdown and getting creative with stuff that like I had no idea what I was doing with video. When I first got down there, I had no idea what synergy was or breaking anything down, but I
Sure.
learned the game from a different perspective that way. Right. Like
Right.
I learned the points in offense that they run, because I broke it down every day, repeatedly. And so I got to learn different things about the offense, different things that defenses do against it. So I'm actually the offensive coordinator here at Chicago State running that offense. And I go back to my time at the University of Richmond as a video coordinator all the time to be able to run the offense here.
No,
Which is great. But then going into the ops side, like it's like, everything that I did at Spees, right? Like all the little things that I did as far as like uniform orders and, and, filling pop machines and, all the small stuff that I did on my way up through, the coaching ladder kind of came back to help me in that regard. Cause a lot of it is organization. You're planning trips. Everybody kind of sees the end product when it's on TV, right? Like they like, you're sitting at home and you're watching a game and you see the teams playing, but like
Hmm.
they had to get a flight there, right? They had to get a
Right.
bus there, they had to get hotels, they had to get food, like, they had to have uniforms. They had, the uniforms had to get washed. Like they had a practice that had to get scheduled. Like, there's just so many small things that people don't really think about. And that's where the ops job comes into, right?
Man,
And so go ahead.
no, I was just saying details, man.
Right.
Details are
Right.
key for to be a director
Right.
of ops.
Right. And and that's kind of where you start, right? Like if you're a young guy that wants to get into the coaching profession, like very rarely are you able to jump right into an assistant job.
Right.
Um, you have to put your time in, and I put my time in for, 5, 6 years, well, 6 years, I think it was, in secondary roles, just trying to, get, basically a glorified secretary is what I always called it, and,
Right.
so, you're doing that kind of stuff. And then, Lance Irvin gave me an unbelievable opportunity up here at Chicago State to be an assistant coach. And to be honest with you, a lot of things that I did as an ops guy that I learned as an ops guy, I learned as a video coordinator, I learned it, at Spees, working for Spees, I've taken over here. Right. And it's like, every place I've been, I can take, one or two things to be a good assistant coach. And, hopefully so far with Lance, I've been a good assistant coach so far because of the lessons that I've learned along the way. So.
How did you cross paths with Spees? I know you mentioned Spees, and now obviously as Indy Heat gym rats. Like, how did you cross paths with Todd and Jared and the guys?
Oh man, what a story that is. So I
Share.
was
Yeah,
at
yeah.
Anderson University playing, right? I was at Anderson University, and I hurt my knee, right? And so like I
Right.
was coming home in the summertime, needed a job, and I was like, I don't really want to actually work, right?
Right.
So like I'm gonna go, maybe I'll just, email over at the time it was Spees, right? Like everybody knew it as Spees, right? So I emailed over there to Indy Heat guys and was just like, hey, like, can I coach a team for the summer? Yeah, coach a team this summer. And they started to give me some opportunities to kind of build. Like it started out, I was just coaching a team, and then I was helping with the Wolfpack program, and then I was doing individual workouts. Chris had me doing individual workouts with guys, and
Yeah.
then it was, hey, like one time it was like, hey, we don't have, a couple of our coaches can't make it to this Indy Heat game. Can you coach the Indy Heat game? Next thing I know, I'm standing on the sideline coaching like you, and like I'm coaching you and Nick Moore and Raphael and all those guys, and I'm like, holy crap, man. And like I'm coaching Deshaun.
Right.
I'm like, what's going on here, man?
Premier
Like
players.
right. And I'm like, what's going on? And that's when I'm helping run Tuesday night skills camps, and then, like I said, the younger kids, the younger Wolfpack kids. And, so that summer, that was 2010. Right. And so like, I'm
Right.
starting to like really, really like this stuff. Like, I'm like, coaching might be my thing. And Todd can attest to this, or Chris, I think maybe even. I hurt my knee again working out with Donnie Hale. Donnie Hale
Wow.
and I were working out on court one at Spees. and I was getting ready to go back to play, right? Like I'm getting ready to
Right.
go back to Anderson, and this is probably in like August, right, of 2010, and I hurt my knee again. So I'm like, man, I'm gonna like miss the season. Like, do I want to go back to Anderson and like not coach? So I'm like, forget it. I'm gonna go to IPFW and I'm just going to coach, right? And I'm just
Right.
going to coach the ball and work here. And, so I worked with, Casey and Todd and Chris and all those guys. And, did that, did the fall stuff, did the fall leagues and stuff like that. And just kept coaching, kept with Spees, and so with the full intent of, hey, I'm going to go back and play again. Like after this year, I'm going to do it 1 year, and then I'm going to go back and play. And I just kept falling in love with coaching. I kept getting more responsibility. With the gym rat stuff, started, helping you out,
Right. He was
and
picking me up, man. I appracate it. He was coming
driving
out
you
here
back
to
and
pick
forth
me
to
up.
Gary,
Yeah.
driving, and so like, started having more responsibility, started to realize like, hey man, I'm a good player, but I'm not good enough to keep playing. Like after
Right.
I'm done here, like maybe I should look into coaching and stay around the game. So I stayed in Fort Wayne, and like I said, unbelievable opportunities that I kept getting, and it kind of led to me working for James Blackman down at Marion, because I met the Blackmans. Got really close with them. So then I ended up going down and coaching with James down at Marion, and got that experience too. So it's kind of wild. It's kind of forced on me, really. I'm forever grateful for all the opportunities that everybody with that program gave me. And it's paid dividends for me.
No question.
Anytime that you say, hey, I worked for the Indy Heat Gym Rats, like people at least perk up, right?
Yeah.
And then Todd and Chris and those guys have made phone calls for me that, have been great, and Jared and, all those guys, Jared Wolf, and, I just
Shout out
talked to
to
Burke.
those guys. Yeah,
Yeah.
Burks is my guy, man. Burks on the grind right now. Like, hopefully we have a EYBL this spring, because
Yeah,
I
let's hope so.
know that we can't afford to like miss another EYBL event and also March Madness, man. So
Right. Nobody can. Nobody
fingers are
can.
crossed. What are some challenges, Tommy, like being a coach? I mean, connecting with these guys in this era, because social media is everything for these kids.
Right. Well, I think that's one of the advantages that I have.
Mhm.
I'm 30. I'm younger. You know, I'm up to date on how to use Twitter, how to use Instagram.
Right.
Music is a huge deal with these guys for some reason. So like I can like connect with them a little bit, like,
For sure.
so stuff like that I think is big. Like you can connect with those guys. The thing that you have to realize with these guys too, though, is like every kid's different, right? Some kids don't want you to be buddy buddy with them. Some guys want you to be buddy buddy with them. Some guys want to be left alone. Some guys want you to call them every day. So you just got to figure out. I think the biggest thing that I've learned over my first 6 years in college coaching is that you got to find each individual person and meet them where they're at. Right?
Right.
Each individual guy. Like you can't force yourself on one of these kids, and be like, hey, like, I'm coming at you. I'm coming at you as a jerk, as a coach, as like not a jerk, but I'm coming at you as tough and mean and stuff like that. Like
Right.
some kids need love and some kids don't. So it's like
No
some kids you just
question.
got to figure out. There's other kids that's like, hey, like I'm gonna come to the cafeteria and have lunch with you. There's other kids that are like, I don't want to see you unless it's practice, right? So like
Right.
you just got to figure out each kid and meet them where they're at. And I think that's I think that's the biggest challenge of kids right now too. And like right now, especially with COVID and everything going on too, it's like, you got to make sure that these kids are, very, 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 you got to be responsible for them, right? Like you got to make sure that, classes are taken care of, that they're going to their Zoom meetings. You got to get creative with them right now, because they're sitting in their rooms a lot of times kind of bored, right? Like they
No
can't leave
question.
their room. They
Their
can't, like
attention
they're
spans are short.
right. Right. They're like gnats, right? Like it's
Right.
like, so it's like you're trying to figure out how to be creative with them, but also not be like disgenuine, right? Like, or, so it's like you don't want to force like a weird game onto them where they're like, oh man, like this is like a scavenger hunt, but like you
Right.
also want to be like, hey, like we got to get creative. And so, I mean, it's challenging for sure, but like I like it because it's like for me, like I've always been, and you can like attest to this with me, like it's always been, I just want to be who I am,
For
and
sure.
be genuine. And like, so like for me, it's like, like I said, I'm meeting guys where they're at, and so like, and they're meeting me where I'm at, so it's like
Right.
a genuine relationship at the end of the day. So,
How have you been able to navigate through COVID, Tommy?
well, I mean, I caught it. I mean, you
Yeah.
knew that obviously,
Yeah.
and that, it was a rough thing. So, and that's, I caught it and then I got this job here.
How
So I
did you
literally,
feel like how were you like having COVID? Because I know some people have COVID and they don't really feel any symptoms or not,
so
but
I
like,
had a really bad case of it. I almost died.
yeah.
So I caught it in July, and I caught it on a Friday afternoon. Didn't really know it. I actually went down to Houston. I was at Lamar at the time down in Texas, and I picked my wife and daughter up in Houston. We drove about an hour and a half back home, and I'm sitting in the back seat just hacking up a lung, and I'm thinking like, okay, like I have like a a cold or something like that.
Right.
Friday, got home, had like 104 fever. So my wife's like, go upstairs, quarantine from us, whatever. Woke up the next morning, still had 104 fever. Got tested. They called me within like 25 minutes on that Saturday. Said you have COVID, stay in the room, whatever. So that Sunday, like my temperature was going from like 104 down to 96, back up to 104. I had chills. You know how like when you're like you your foot falls asleep and it comes back
Right.
to feeling that tingly feeling.
Yeah.
That was my entire body every time I moved. I lost taste for like an hour. I lost smell for an hour. Had like really hard, like my chest felt like I had a tractor on top of it. Well, that Monday morning I was getting short of breath. And my wife got me one of those proximeters, I think they call them, for your finger,
Yeah.
with your blood oxygen level. And mine was dropping down below 90. It's supposed to be above 98. So they took me into the hospital, and admitted me right away. My lungs I caught double pneumonia. They call it COVID lung. My lungs filled up to 19%. I only had 19% capacity in my lungs. So they put me on a nose tube right away. They told me they were like, yeah, you're at level 4. And everybody was like really calm. So I'm like, level 4, there's probably like 10 levels. That's not a big deal. I found out later it only goes up to level 5.
Wow.
So it was pretty serious. So I was in the hospital for 6 days in ICU, isolated for 6 days. I had 117 different injections of some type of medication, 117 needles at some point. So like I said, they gave me plasma about every 45 minutes to an hour. They would come in and put a needle in me and put some type of medicine into
That
me.
has to suck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I ended up coming out of it. They did tell me if
Praise
I would have
God.
waited another 5 to 6 hours, I probably wouldn't have made it. Or if
Man.
I would have caught it back in March, I probably wouldn't have made it. So
Where
I had
where
a
do you
pretty
think
bad case of it.
where do you
So
think you like got it from? Like, did they
you know
say?
what? It's hard to tell.
Uh-huh.
It's hard to tell. Um, I was actually pretty safe for the most part. Like I'd go to the gym and work out, and then I go to
Right.
work.
Yeah.
So I mean, if I had to guess, I probably got it at the gym, but like I could have got it at pumping gas.
Yeah.
I could have got it anywhere. I mean, I was pretty safe with it. They they want to say that maybe it's my I have an A negative blood type, and apparently that's one that's supposed to be bad or something like that. So
Oh,
I can't really tell you, but I know that that there was a lot of prayers. There's a lot of people that were thinking about me that helped me get through it.
I'm happy you
But,
pulled through.
right.
It's
No, I
serious.
mean, right. Well, I think the hardest part was being away from my wife and daughter for
Right.
really. I mean, when I got out of the hospital, so I was in the hospital for 6 days, and literally all it is a bed, and they have like a big ventilator system. It's like venting air basically through the room, and 3 times a day they'd come in and give you a meal just to just to keep you alive. But there was like one person would come in, they'd be in a suit top to bottom,
Yeah.
and they'd have their mask on, and and they were just coming in to put some medicine in you and leave. They hardly said hi to you. So like if I was talking to anybody, it was just on FaceTime on my phone. But like it was a lonely place for 6 days, man. And that was like probably the hardest part. But then you get out of the hospital and you come back home and you're isolated in a room for 14 days once you
Wow.
got back out. So I went from 6 days in the hospital, basically in a bed, to 14 days in in isolation in my own home. So, when people say like, the COVID thing's hard, it is, but it's even harder like after you recovered from it. Like for me, I'm still not recovered. Like if I do a workout, I can't go from like riding a bike to like doing a sit up because my lungs don't expand yet.
Right.
So it's kind of hard. And, there's some, every 2 weeks, it'll be weird. Like I'll be able to run a mile in 8 minutes and, which isn't great, but I'll be able to run a mile in 8 minutes. And then 2 weeks later, like I can barely run, I can barely walk up my stairs, so it's just like, back and forth and, some complications there. But, it's been different from a basketball standpoint too, right? Like
Right.
we have to hit pause every once in a while, or we don't have to hit pause every once in a while. And, you're just so nervous about that one, that one case that happens amongst your team, because then you're shut down, right? Like,
Right.
and so like, then, it's like, everybody has to, so every test that you do, you come back and you're crossing your fingers that you don't have to shut down. And here we are, whatever, 10 days before our first game. And you're just hoping that, tomorrow the tests come back great so we can keep practicing.
Who do you guys
You
play
know,
first?
So our first game is IUPUI, play IUPUI at home, and then we play the DePaul Blue Demons then
Nice.
on the 28th at DePaul.
Are
So
fans
hopefully,
allowed?
no,
Oh,
no. Well, at least at our games, I don't know if DePaul is allowing fans or not.
yeah,
I would assume probably not because of the Chicago shutdown. I would
yeah.
assume they probably wouldn't be, but we'll see. I mean, it's just and like I said, it's going to be such a moving target. Like it's going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if we play a third of our games or if we play all of them. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we win either way. So, or if we play none, I wouldn't be
Right.
surprised if that's part of it either. So we'll see.
Man,
So,
the people that follow you, Tommy, man, talk about CrossFit and how did you get into CrossFit, man? Because you're a machine in there.
no, I don't know about a machine. I call myself a fake CrossFitter because like I go there and like there's like 50-year-old women that are like climbing ropes and I'm
They're
like,
buff,
oh my God, some of
dude.
these women and men are just unbelievable. No, so it's weird. I did like like I'm not a bill of health. I'm not like
Uh-huh.
a I'm not no magazine's going to put me on the front page. Like I'll put you that way. But no, they I always have liked to like do different types of workouts, right? So like when I was in DC, when I lived in DC, I did 9 rounds boxing. I really, really
Okay.
enjoyed it. There's one right down by our
I've
apartment.
been
I
to
really
one in
liked it.
Fort Wayne.
Right, right. I
Yeah.
really liked it. It was fun, right? Like it was just different. So I did that every morning. I'm an early riser, so I do that 5 a.m. every morning. And then when I got to Cleveland, I was in the office usually at like 5 a.m. So like I just worked out at the office there. Um, and then I got down to Lamar and they didn't have like a 9 rounds. I was like, man, I really miss 9 rounds. Well, there was a gym, a CrossFit gym right down the road from me. And I'm like, I drove by it every day and I saw people working out. I'm like, let me try it. And like I got into it and I was like, man, like that's kind of looks fun. So like I got into it and started doing it and lost a ton of weight doing it and then you start to see the results and you're like, oh God, like this is kind of fun. And started doing that and so it's been fun. It's like it's back to like the athletic days, right, where you're like cleaning
Yeah.
stuff, deadlifting,
Right.
stuff like that. You feel like an athlete
You
again.
guys do ton of reps though, don't you? You guys do like
Yeah, it's
20
like a
reps,
reps
bar
thing,
clean.
right? Like so like you do like every day you do like a strength thing, so it's like 2 rep max or 4 rep max, and then it's like 15 minutes of like so like the other day it was like you did 30 deadlifts, 30 deadlifts, 30 calories on the bike, 20 deadlifts, 20 of the calories on the bike, 10 deadlifts, 10 calories on the bike, and you're going up in weight every time, right? So it's like
Man.
you're just doing a ton of reps and stuff like that, and it's a burner. But like I'm not a real CrossFitter, so don't like take it. Like, I'm not one of those guys on TV that like are like whatever like
They be
doing
seeing the
barbell flips
barbell
and
on your Instagram and like when you post it on Twitter or whatnot,
right,
like man, he's in a lab with it doing
right.
CrossFit.
No,
Uh,
I'm doing the scaled version. I'm doing like the
okay.
junior. I'm doing the junior high version of it all. But no, I enjoy it, man. Like
Uh,
I've gotten better at it, and the one thing that's cool about it is it's like a camaraderie thing. There's a lot of really cool people around it, so you get to
yeah,
meet some really cool people, and
that's
and that's what
awesome.
I like. At the end of the day, I'm a people person. Like so,
Yeah.
like for me, it's like that's what it's all about is the community of it all. And same reason I did I loved the AAU stuff. Right, it was like just
Right.
being around the people and like the same thing with coaching. Like I love being around people, being able to invest in people. Like it's funny. I go in. Right now I do the 7:30 class, but when
Right.
I was in Texas, I go in at 6 a.m. every morning.
Hmm.
And it was the same people at 6 a.m. every morning. And those people got to be my friends, right? Like it's like I was asking them about their sons and daughters, and they were asking me about my daughter and season and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And it's like, just kind of cool little things. So
They hold
that's
you
what
accountable too. Like that's how it
right,
is when I go to yoga like tomorrow morning, Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays at 6 a.m.
right.
Near you in Cherville, Pure Hot Yoga.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like,
You're right next to where my gym is actually.
yeah,
My
so it's
gym's
the
right
same
across the
group.
hospital.
It's the
Okay,
same group, and I have a best friend in there named Gary. He's around 75, and
right,
we do like crow pose, and he holds me accountable if I'm not getting low as I should. Because if he could get low,
right,
he feels
right.
like I could get just as lower. So I
Right.
definitely know what you mean.
Right. Well,
Um,
for me, it's more so I look over there and the 60-year-old woman's bench pressing more than me, and I'm like, okay, that
wow.
can't happen. That can't happen. So I gotta, I gotta up my weight a little bit here. I can't take it easy.
What's last segment? What are some gems or nuggets that Coach Irvin always preaches to you and to the staff itself?
Coach Irvin, his biggest thing is he doesn't want anybody outwork him, right?
Okay.
And so and we're talking about holding each other accountable, right? Like, so my goal every day is I want to outwork my boss, right? Like
Right.
I want to outwork him, and he works his tail off. So like it's hard, right? And so I told I've been on these Zoom calls a ton, over the past however many. however many months or whatever. And
Right.
one of the things that that I found that I kind of live by is like when somebody gives me my job, or my job description, right? Like that's the bare minimum for me.
Hmm.
Like, and so like I love job descriptions because now I know like what the bare minimum is. And so when coach gave me my job description, I'm like, man, this is a lot, but like I loved all the, I love all the responsibilities, but coach is always talking about like nobody will outwork me. Like nobody will outwork me. So, he holds me accountable just by saying that. Like,
Right.
because like if nobody's gonna outwork him, like I'm trying to outwork my boss, and then vice versa. Like he sees me out there early on at practice getting guys shots up. Like next thing I know, like he's out there, like, we had practice at 9 a.m. the other day. He's here at 7:30, right? So I'm like, okay, well next time I'm getting here at 7:15.
Right.
And then it's 8 o'clock. Like I'm like we're like trying to like outdo each other, right? And
No
so like
question.
that's pretty cool, and it's awesome to work for, my biggest piece of advice for any coach coming up through is like, and I learned this from Coach Amir, who's the head coach at Kennesaw State, and he told me this, and it was awesome. Like, never take a job for just the title. Never take a job because you think it's just a better job. Like, you have to make sure that your boss's like core values line up with who you are. Like, if you're a family person and the guy that you're going to work for is not, like, it's just not going to work out, right? Like if you're, and so like what you value, the guy that you're going to work for has to value that as well. And Coach Urban values family. And my biggest thing is my daughter and my wife, and my daughter's 8 months old. When she looks at me, I melt. Like,
Right.
and like there's nothing like coming home and seeing her every day. So Coach Urban's a huge family person. So like we align in that regard. So then when we get to practice, like there's no misalignment of anything, right? And so that's so important, I think, for everybody. And Coach Urban tells me all the time, there's nothing more important than family. And so having those goals aligned are huge too.
Do you remember your first Zoom discussion prior to like when we had this pandemic, everybody had to be in the house? Like I know you soaked up so much information on those Zoom calls.
Well, it's funny, like
Yeah.
so so if you would have told me 8 months ago that like how much like the pandemic would have helped my career, I would have think like so like let's go back to March, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm in Katy, Texas with the Lamar basketball team, right? Like we're getting ready. We just won. We just beat. And this was like all this stuff was happening, and we're at our conference tournament. We had just beat McNeese the night before. We're getting ready to play Nicholls State, right? And so, that day, I think it was like a Thursday maybe, like we're getting ready, like we're in our pregame meal and we go over to Katy High School for practice. And like I got there early, right? Like I drove separate. So I drive there early and our guys are coming in like, hey, the Big Ten just canceled their conference tournament. The Big East just canceled their conference tournament. They're like, are we playing? I'm like, yeah, I just plan on playing. So we're in there, we're practicing, right? And all of a sudden our AD call says like, you guys have an hour to get back to the hotel, get your stuff and get back to this campus. Like tournament's canceled, season's canceled, we're done, right? So, start there, right? That's March, right? So go back, guys go on spring break, nobody knows what's happening. All of a sudden, like that was the last time I ever saw I ever saw a lot of those Lamar guys. Cause like by the time that I got the job, like they had never come back on campus. So
Wow.
that was the last time I saw a lot of those guys. So anyway, long story short, like I started doing these Zoom calls. Like I like got a hold of Adam Gordon at Rising Coaches. Like, hey, what can I help you with some things? He gave me the opportunity to just think tank, which I did on Tuesdays, and it was like just for me, it was I wanted to give back to the game, give back to younger guys, because like my thing is like managers, video coordinators, stuff like that. Like
Right.
they never get the opportunity to like actually like talk basketball, right? Like they're always just told like this is what I need. They never get the opportunity to talk basketball. So like I wanted to give them the opportunity. So that was like my first Zoom thing, right? Like I'm like
Right.
hosting this thing through Rising Coaches. Started to do that, and then I'm sitting in my living room in March, and one of the assistant coaches from Lamar was like, Tommy, like there's this thing coming up on Tuesday night or on Wednesday night. You need to go to it. It's called Be Ready. Alvin Brooks at Baylor is putting it on. A bunch of college coaches are on there. You need to go do it. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever, And I've been on a bunch of other Zooms and stuff like that, just trying to learn and connect and stuff like that. But I was like, okay, cool. But this is like 7:58 and this thing's at 8 o'clock. So like I jump on like thinking, not knowing. And, long story short, like got on there, asked a question, followed up with some emails, started going like every Wednesday and Sunday to this thing. And and Coach Brooks had one session of it where he was doing mock assistant coaching interviews. Right. And so he picked me for some reason. There were 6 of us that he picked. I mean, there's 100 people on this thing every night, and he picked me. And so what he did was I did a mock interview with Johnny Estelle, who's the head coach of Texas A&M Kingsville, and
Okay.
Coach Amir Abdul Rahim, who's the head coach of Kennesaw State, was my coach for the interview, right? So I was on the phone with Coach Amir like for like an entire week getting ready for this interview with Coach Estelle, and they interviewed me, right, over Zoom. Well, Lance Irvin was actually on that call and interviewed another guy, a different guy, right? He interviewed a different guy. He was one of the head coaches. So that was in like probably late April. So I keep going to these things. I do keep doing the think tank, keep going to all these Zooms and learning and meeting people and stuff like that. And just basically just trying to put myself out there, right? Just trying to get to know people and get my name out there at the same time, but also learn, you know, and learn a ton actually. But anyway, and so as it started to progress, I started going to this thing, started to get to know these people more. And so actually the funny thing is I was in the hospital with COVID when Lance called me and asked me, hey, like, you did a really good job on that interview for Be Ready. Would you be interested in being an assistant at Chicago State? And I was like, wow. Absolutely, I would.
Right.
Like, let me get through this COVID thing and make sure that I'm alive to be able to go up there and do it first, you know. But like, yeah, I absolutely would. So I got out of the hospital. And, you know, I talked to Lance when I was in quarantine. He offered me the job while I was in quarantine. So I literally was like, blessing. So then I took this job. So I got out of quarantine. My wife was packing the house while I was in quarantine, you know. But the whole thing came down to, like, I had never met Lance in my life until I got up here to Chicago. Like, my first day on the job was the first day I met Lance face to face. Like, and so like, but the whole thing was through Zoom, through going through these Zoom things. And like, like, honestly, like, I tell guys, like, it was better for me because, like, if I would have went to the Final Four, right, like, I would have never met Alvin Brooks. And I never would have met Jerome Tang. I never would have met Dream Dowling. I never would have met any of these people. I never would have had the opportunity to do what Adam Gordon's allowed me to do on Rising Coaches. Like, I never would have had these opportunities. But because of the Be Ready stuff, because of the Rising Coaches stuff, like, you know, I asked a question to Grant McCaslin, who's the head coach of North Texas. I don't even think that he knew what the question was. It was the dumbest question I think that's ever been asked in a Zoom meeting. But because, you know, where the Zooms work, when you talk, your face pops up, right?
Right.
You know, so what I did was I strategically thought, I'll ask this question, you know, and then I'll follow up with an email like, hey, I was the dude that asked the dumb question or whatever about so-and-so, but thank you for answering it. Thank you for the opportunity. And I did that. And then I just kept putting myself out there. Like, they did like on one of the Be Readies, they did like a scouting the Chicago Bulls during the last dance thing.
Yeah.
And I spent an entire week scouting the 96 Bulls, like, and putting together like a whole scouting report. I watched like every game that they played in the NBA finals and like broke down their entire scouting report, put together a scouting report. And that went a long way for those guys.
How did you guard Jordan?
Prayed, but that was about it. So, you know, but no, so I did all that stuff and just kept putting myself out there. Right. And like, and, you know, the Lord blessed me with a ton of opportunities on it. And, you know, and if I would have told you in March that 8 months later, some of my biggest mentors, friends, you know, people that I love, like I've never met in face to face, like I've just on Zoom, like I would have told you were crazy, but like, that's where I am right now. Like, you know, Lester Stewart, Mikhail McLean, like those guys, like Mikhail McLean's at Houston, Lester Stewart's up at Casper College, Anthony White's at Ferrum. You know, I'm missing Omar Gonzalez down at Kingsville. I'm missing a ton of dudes, but like all these guys, like that I'm friends with, you know, these guys, Tim Pete, you know, like these guys I'm friends with, really, really good friends with. I've never met them face to face. I met Lester Stewart for the first time face to face when he came here to Chicago. When he came home, we went to Buffalo Wild Wings for the first time for like 20 minutes. That's the only, like, but like,
really,
I call him every day, right? Like, I like call him every day, and he's like one of my best friends, and like we met over Zoom, right? You know, so it's like, you know, you have all these guys that like you become friends with. Alvin Brooks, like, has become such a big mentor to me, and I didn't know him from Adam. You know, wow. I still never met the guy face to face. Like, I've just met him over Zoom, talked to him on the phone, but the guy is one of my biggest mentors. Jerome Tang, the same way. He's been the associate head coach of Baylor for 17 years. And like, I can call him and ask him anything, ask him to pray for me, ask him to, you know, hey, I need advice on coaching, I need advice on life. And the guy will pick up the phone and answer it for me. Like he's known me for 30 years. Right. So,
right.
You know, and so Zoom has been, in this pandemic, has been one of the best things that has ever happened to me, you know, as far as my career and everything like that. It's like when they say God's got a blessing in the storm, man, he really does, man. It's unbelievable.
I think you figured it out, Tommy, like the art of the hustle, networking, putting yourself in the right position at the right time. And you trust God to let you go through this door, which you didn't know what was going to be on the other side. and you took that leap of faith, man. So I salute you, bro. That's why I
Appreciate it.
wanted you to come on the podcast. And
Well,
Todd
you
and
were a
I,
big part of it, man. I don't know if you
I
realize that, man, but those drives up here, man, even
yeah,
though you were asleep most of the time, man,
yeah,
like that was the grind, man. And that was
yeah,
like the thing. Like Todd's always been appreciative of everything that I've done, like, doing that stuff, doing this, and, the small things, man, right? Like the stuff that you don't, the things
right.
that, the young guys that are coming up and coaching, like they see the glitz and glamour of it all, right? They see the sideline, the all that stuff. They don't see the 3 a.m.s that you're driving somebody home after they landed
No,
back home from Seattle, the drives and stuff like
no,
that,
they don't see that.
that kind of stuff. So,
So no, I appreciate it, bro. Thank you for sharing your journey, man. And like I said, you're an inspiration to a lot of people that's trying to come up and coach, man. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, man. You're always a brother to me. So.
Hey, I appreciate that, bro. And